What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Auburn Blitz podcast. Touch your mic or something, Randy. We got a lot of feedback, man. Woo, man. That'll wake everybody up on a Monday morning. That's better. That's a lot better. Ooh, Lord have mercy. Hey, we want to get you started here on a Monday morning, get you in bright and shiny, even though it's not too bright and shiny outside this morning. So, man, we got a lot to talk about, even though Auburn really didn't have much to say yesterday in the college football playoff. Everybody had a reaction, and we had a reaction too. And it's going to be interesting to see how this 12-team playoff plays out. But, man, I think it's going to be exciting for college football. Somebody's going to be pissed off. It doesn't matter if you had 24 teams, the 25th team would be, or there'd be two or three teams right there trying to lobby to get in. It doesn't matter where the cutoff line is. Everybody's always going to have an argument, but we're going to go back and reminisce a little bit and revisit some of the things that have been said over the years about teams that lose 2-3 games, and should they ever get in a playoff, and should they ever be allowed to compete for a national championship with that kind of record. We'll just kind of talk back about that, and we'll go back through the bracket and show everybody, not that everybody didn't know already, but we'll just kind of give our analysis, Randy, on who we think got misseeded, who we thought got it right, and what the games look like.
Well, all I can say is I'm thrilled that exactly what needed to happen on Saturday did. Let's put it that way. We needed SMU to have a close football game down to the end, and that's exactly what we got. And it was hard to keep them out once that happened. You can complain about it. You can have a problem with it. I'm an Auburn fan. There's no part of me that could possibly be happier this morning than Alabama being the last one possibly in or left out, and they are left out. So I'm really happy about that, I must say. But with Alabama, look, this team lost 2 football games to subpar teams. They lost a 6-6 Vandy team. No Alabama team that ever loses to Vandy should make a playoff, including us. And then they lose to a 500 Oklahoma team. And they didn't only lose, Brett. They got drummed a couple of weeks ago by a 500 Oklahoma team. Now, they had a very bad Auburn team come in to play them. So they had nothing that they could really prove following that. When you beat a sub-500 Auburn team, it doesn't help out your resume following up a 21-point loss to Oklahoma. So it is what it is. I agree with you. Somebody had to be left out. You can go through all the scenarios from here's our schedule and here's our out-of-conference games. But at the end of the day, you lost 2 games to sub-500 teams or 500 teams in the SEC, and it cost you. And I think you get what you deserve. And I don't hear a lot of Alabama play. I mean, of course, there are some that are crying a little bit this morning. You and I would be too if it was Auburn, the last one left out. That's part of it. But I think they all understand that if they don't lose on the road to Vandy, they're in this thing. Well, no doubt about it.
It does boil down to this. You can, after the fact, you can whine about it and say, well, you can start comparing your resume to somebody else's. But at the end of the day, everybody controls their own destiny. And if you take care of business, even Roll Tide Willie understands that. He said it. I think he was probably one of the more rational ones I saw respond yesterday. He said, look, you should not go on the road and score 3 points against Oklahoma. I mean, and he gets it. He goes, we ought not to be in there. And I know it's kind of a little gimmick there with him. But here's my point. Here's the thing that I kept hearing yesterday. Well, let's all schedule easier non-conference games. Okay, that's fine. It ain't going to do you any good if you still lose 3 conference games. You can go out and schedule Akron and Northern Illinois and somebody else. And if you still lose to Vanderbilt and Oklahoma or any combination of conference games, when you lose 3 games in this new format, you're probably going to be on the outside looking in. Look, there's one thing that's not in the college football playoff right now. It's a team that has more than 2 losses. And you can say SMU doesn't deserve to be in there because they're scheduled. All right, here's what I told somebody yesterday, and they said they 110% agreed after I explained it. I said, we all signed up, and I said our conferences signed up to be part of this playoff format. When they signed the paper, they agreed to let those other conferences send their champion to the playoffs. Guess what? The SEC's been the hardest conference, not just this year, but for a long dang time. And so, no, our schedules aren't ever going to be as easy as an SMU schedule or a Baylor schedule or somebody like that when they get a good team like an Indiana this year. Okay? So we already know that going in. So when they amass an 11-1 record, but they've only played one top 25 team, ain't our fault. But we've got to deal with it. And so it's the same in baseball. It's the same in basketball. It's the same in softball. It's the same in every sport in the SEC. And look, I can distinctly remember multiple times getting it shoved down my throat in 2017. Now you'll come back now and say, well, there were only 4 teams or there were only 2 teams. Look, it doesn't change the fact that you still were one of the better teams in college football that year, and you didn't get a chance to play for a national championship. So no matter what the format is or how many teams get in, somebody's always going to be complaining. We've had our fair share, Randy. We had a fair, legit argument in 04 when we got left out. Somebody said, well, Oklahoma was ranked ahead of y'all. Well, who decided that? A bunch of daggum pencil neck guys in a room, that ain't never played before in the AP poll? Is that what decided that Oklahoma had a better team than Auburn in 04? I mean, you can go all around the world on making an argument why your team got left out or why they didn't. And it's the same at the end of the day. You control your own destiny by winning your football games if you're an elite team.
Well, and, I think that's the key point you make there. I don't know who are elite teams this year. I'm not sure there are any. You take Oregon. Oregon's probably the closest to it, but I think once they match up with some SEC teams here in this playoff run, you're going to see an Oregon team that's not that much better than anyone else. And I think they're very well coached. Don't get me wrong. And I do think that they went out and got the best quarterback in the transfer portal, maybe even better than Cam Ward, Brett. If I were to just go choose someone that I think can come in and win football games, that's what Oregon pulled off, and that's what they're pulling off in the high school side. But back to your point on the SEC, I don't know if you got a chance to watch much of it yesterday, but I watched a decent amount of that Missouri and Kansas game.
I did.
And that's the point that you were making is if we're going into SEC basketball play, where does Missouri land on your worries for Auburn losing basketball games? I'm just talking start of the season, not watching that game yesterday. If I were to ask you to rank the SEC teams,
they'd be way down. They'd be way down the list
in the bottom 3 or 4.
Yep.
And and they just beat the number 1 team and had a 20-point lead in the first half.
And they're 8-1.
Yeah, I know it. So now I'm a little worried about them, but that's every year with the SEC, Brett. You don't know who's going to come up. You have no clue who the South Carolina in football is going to be because everybody's throwing money at this thing. Everybody is trying to position themselves to be a really good program moving forward. And your point is very valid that it's not only football. This is something that is going on massively in basketball, and it is always going on in baseball. This division we've been in baseball has been the very best college baseball division in the country for a long time, and it's not going anywhere. And you look down every year, I think you say 4 of the top 6 teams ranked right now are in our division, and here we are right outside of it, and we're a little worried about it. I mean, it's what you sign up for. If you're going to coach in this conference, you're going to be a team in this conference, you sign up for it. But here's the biggest problem I have, let's just say, with the Alabama fans that you and I are friends with is, yes, you lost on the road to Vandy and it cost you, but the way that you lost a couple of weeks ago against Oklahoma should just rid yourself of any complaining that you have. Look, if you go over there and you lose by a last-second field goal at Oklahoma and you score 27 points and they beat you 30-27, that's one thing. But, Brett, a couple of weeks ago, you go get drummed.
Blowout.
Not kind of drummed. I mean, you score 3 points. Your least point total since the early 2000s. pre Nick Saban. You haven't had a game offensively that you've looked this poor in that amount of time. So I wouldn't be sitting there as an Auburn fan whining. Of course, we would like to get in at some point, but when that's your resume, it falls on deaf ears, honestly.
Well, what you have to quit doing is comparing programs to teams. And that's what I'm using Alabama because they were the team left out. So if it were Michigan that were up here complaining, I'd be using them as an example. Yeah, historically, Alabama is arguably the best college football program in the history. Does that give them an automatic pass when they're on the border of getting in year after 1 year versus another? No, it doesn't, because on a particular given year, somebody like Indiana, somebody like SMU might have a good season. Do they automatically get discredited because they haven't had a historically better program long term? I mean, that's what you get caught up in. And look, I know that Luke and I and you and all of us go back and forth, and I agree with points, especially in the NCAA tournament. But when you get to the Sweet 16, the Elite Eight, you want to see the better teams, because we've seen teams get in and make their run, and then they get into the Sweet 16 and Elite Eight, and it's not as fun as maybe a particular matchup that we've seen in the past. But this is the new age of what we're dealing with. And the playoff, Alabama's been able to make the playoffs when there's only been 2 teams and 4 teams. And this is a 12-team playoff. And I heard several Alabama fans talk about, hey, we can't make a 12-team playoff. We had one telling us that this weekend in Birmingham at the Super 7, a good friend of ours, a big Alabama fan. He's like, hey, man, we're sitting here clamoring to try to get the 12th seed. He said, we should have took care of business. You know, we need to go back and reflect and see what we needed to correct in our program rather than wasting our time on this. We're not good enough by our standards to even be worried about a playoffs. I thought that was a very rational way to look at it.
It is. And just to try to transition away from worrying about what Alabama fans are upset or not upset about, let's talk about Auburn and how far we are.
Michael's got a great comment up on the screen right now.
Yeah, Auburn offensive has been terrible for a long time, yet we have 2 recent former offensive coordinators that are head coaches in the playoffs. It's back, Michael, to the points that we try to make all the time on this show. What in the world is causing Auburn offensively to not get to the next level and to consistently bring guys in and get them up to the ceiling that they have in their skill set? I don't have the answer for that, especially at quarterback. Auburn hasn't brought, and it may be part of this with offensive coordinators and stuff, but yes, they are having a lot of success when they move on from Auburn. I mean, look at the extreme success that Bo Nix had when he finally got away from Auburn. Look at the great success that Malik Willis had once he got away from Auburn. This is the thing that drives all of us Auburn fans nuts, is that we have this talent at hand and we can't take advantage of it. I don't have an answer for it. You know, it's like me trying to transition away from talking about Alabama. Yeah, I got a little bit of humor out of them not making the playoffs yesterday. It made my day, but at the end of the day, we're so far from even being in the talks of making the playoffs that it takes any of that excitement from them not getting in and their heartache back pointed directly at us, Brett, that I'm hopeful that we can get there. But when was the last time we even scratched it? 2017?
That's it. 2017.
I mean, we're talking about 7 years ago.
Let me just say this. All of that you just said, I mean, everybody moving away from Auburn, having success. They were obviously successful offensively coming in. That's why Auburn hired them. Hugh Freeze, no different. At Liberty, putting up unreal offensive numbers. Malik Willis leaves Auburn to go join Hugh Freeze, and he puts up great numbers. Hugh Freeze comes over here and falls in the same daggum abyss that every coach has been falling into offense. I don't have an answer, man. I've quit trying to figure this riddle out. I don't know if it's somebody dabbling in the business. I don't know if they get over here and forget how to coach. It is really an anomaly. I don't have an explanation, because you know what? There's no part of me that didn't think that if Hugh Freeze left and went somewhere else, all of a sudden he'd become another offensive guru again. I don't have an explanation for any of this stuff. And we've been talking about it for 10 years. And Gus Malzahn was the hot offensive guru, right? And there for the first few years, it was, man, this is going to be some unbelievable numbers. And then he went in the tank and he couldn't find an identity. Then we go out and hire Idiot to come in and replace him. And, he supposedly was a, unbelievable offensive coordinator and, at Boise and had spent time at Texas and young and upcoming. Boy, we're going to couldn't ever really get anything rolling. Runs one of the best quarterbacks in Auburn that we've had in forever off, and he goes to Oregon and almost wins a national championship and a Heisman. And now in comes Hugh Freeze, who'd been over at Liberty putting up unbelievable numbers that everybody had been talking about. And Auburn goes and gets their guy, and he comes over here and averages 16, 17 points a game in SEC play. I don't have an answer, man. I wish I did. I don't.
But it does make you question what's the needs. And, I think that goes back, and Craig says here, I believe the human factor should be taken out of the selection process. Well, it's easier said than done to do that whenever conference champions are getting in, Brett. That's where that's the hard dynamic here is that you can get a conference champion in, and that conference champion, it may not be this year, but they're going to be 3 lost conference champions. They're going to lose a lot of out of conference games. A couple of out of conference games, may lose one in conference game and still be a conference champion. And where do you put them in the seeding? I think there's a better conversation to be had today on where the seeding winds up yesterday.
Right.
I can definitely get involved on, one. And look, the SEC, where they're going to play, and the poor old Oregon, Brett. I mean, you don't talk about getting a terrible 1 seed draw.
There was no benefit for them to be the number 1 seed.
Zero. I mean, they got to play the winner of Tennessee and Ohio State. If you told me at the end of all of this, one of those 2 teams won the national championship, I'd say, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
That's how talented both of those teams are.
Yeah, it wasn't a good draw at all.
No, it was a terrible draw. And, I think if anyone got the best seeding at all, it was if you were the 5 or 6 seed. That's the best draw you could get, and I think that needs to be
here's this comment again. Tony said, I think the committee sent a message to every college football team to play cupcake games and non-conference schedule, just like SMU did. Let me, Tony, I'm not directing this directly at you, okay? But I'm directing it to everybody that is saying this, and I said it just a minute ago. That doesn't fix SEC teams' problems, okay? You can go out and schedule Akron and Northern Illinois and Mercer and all this. I heard it for 5, 6, 7 hours on Twitter and everywhere else after the selection came out. If you lose 3 conference games and don't make the conference championship game, you still don't have an argument. So Alabama didn't lose to a single team they went out and scheduled this year. That's the point.
Let me jump in. I will say this. I agree with Tony from Auburn's standpoint. Let me say, I've been saying this for a long time, Brett. You can shake your head all you want.
Well, I'm going to, because that argument doesn't make any sense based on this.
Here's where it does to me.
No, it doesn't.
Auburn, every year, who do we have to play? We got 3 teams we've got to play every year. Alabama, Georgia, and LSU.
Right.
Well, Brett, why in the hell do we need to go and prove anything to anybody else? If we get through that 3, but here's the problem.
Here's everything.
No. I'm hearing what you're saying, but I'm combating it on the opposite side. If you can only lose 2 football games and get in, which is what it looked like happened this year, correct? Right. Why in the hell would Auburn go out there and play Penn State or Baylor or Cal or any of these teams when there's a very good chance that you're going to at least lose 1, if not 2 of those 3 games that you got there. And the goal at the end of the day is to get in, not to prove how strong of a team. Look, I love what Bruce Pearl's doing because I do think that it's going to make a big difference
in basketball.
It is different in basketball. But in football, what Tony's saying and what everyone else is saying is, man, I cannot take a chance if I'm in the SEC to lose an out-of-conference game.
Well,
why in the world would I? Because we get plenty of our strength of schedule is going to be tough.
Well, look at our
every year.
Yeah, look at our non-conference games this year. They weren't hard. I mean, for the most part, look at this. I hear that part too, and I agree with that part. But what I'm saying is, yes, you're going to get for the 99% of the time, Auburn and Alabama go schedule La Monroe and New Mexico and New Mexico State. I don't see Ohio State and Penn State every once in a while. And that's what we've had because we wanted to add a little bit of excitement for our fans. We want to give them a better road trip, right? We go to Baylor next year. That's not some daunting game. I mean, it's a good football team.
Probably a 50-50 game for Auburn.
For Auburn right now. But here's the point that I'm making. I hear all that. You still have to take care for the SEC teams. SEC is not created like everybody else.
Agreed.
You're still going to have to win your SEC games to have a chance to get into playoffs.
Well, why put yourself at risk?
You're not scheduling all these big teams, Randy. That's what I'm saying. Auburn didn't have some daunting non-conference schedule this year.
Brett,
Cal and New Mexico and La Monroe are about as 3 weaklings as you can schedule.
But Cal's a 50-50 game for Auburn right now. You agree? Is Baylor not a 50-50 game right now? On the road at Baylor, what's Auburn's chances of winning over there with a team that's 5-7 this year that's had 4 losing seasons?
I don't know because the season ain't started yet, so I don't know. It ain't
started. I trust you. I've been an Auburn fan just as long as you have, and what we're going to do is we're going to talk ourselves into thinking that we're a great team that's turning the corner next year, and we're going to have a lot of confidence going over.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that.
We do it every year.
But I just told you that weeks ago. I'm not buying into that this time. I've got to see it on the field.
Okay, well, Brett, where I think you're wrong is that Auburn's schedule is tough enough inside the SEC.
I said that. Go look at my tweet this week.
So
it's already tough.
Schedule some cream puff the other games because you don't need a strength of schedule anymore with this new setup. If there's 12 teams, you cannot take a chance. Well, Baylor's not a cream puff, Brett.
But that schedule's been made years ago.
Okay, well, go and get out of it. Would be what I would suggest us do, is that we would need to go and get out of that game somehow. And I'm not sure if Brett's out, but we'd love to hear from you if Brett pops back in. But Brett's point's valid. I mean, Alabama didn't lose out of conference games. They won all of those. They went over to Wisconsin. Probably their best win of the season was over at Wisconsin, outside of that game that they beat Georgia. But I mean, an on the road, clearly the better team was Alabama with Wisconsin. And so I don't know why you would put yourself at risk outside of that. Brett thinks that it's fine to do that, but no one with more than 2 losses were able to get through. And that's difficult for Auburn every year with the strength of schedule we're going to have, as long as Alabama and Georgia are at the top of their game like they are right now. That's good enough for us. And so, yeah, I would go back. I would look at this schedule. I would definitely, see if we can. I'd hate to get out of some games, but you do really need to look at it that way. And we'll try to pop back on here. I'll see. I'm probably going to have to get off to let Brett get back in. So we'll be right back with you.